Today we're going to compare the OnePlus 9 and the Samsung Galaxy S21 Plus from the perspective of a real-world, day-to-day usage on these two phones. On paper, these phones look really similar, but that couldn't be further from the truth. So the way this video came up, you guys know I hate cases. I dropped my Pixel 4a 5G one too many times, and I guess I got what I deserved. To be fair, the screen's not cracked, it still works, but I cracked the camera glass on the back, and I feel like it's just one drop away from me just completely obliterating it. And since I needed a new phone, I looked at the S21 Plus and the OnePlus 9 like I'm sure a lot of you are. So I bought both of these phones with my own money and used them for a week or two to try to figure out which one I wanted to keep. If you've seen my stuff before on Samsung, you know that I am not a fan of Samsung. But Samsung does some pretty crazy trade-in deals, so I actually used a method that I called out in one of my previous videos on how to save a bunch of money on a Samsung phone, and I was able to snag the S21 Plus for $550, which makes it almost $200 cheaper than the OnePlus 9, or at least the pre-order price that I paid for the OnePlus 9. If you haven't seen the video on how to save over $300 on a new Samsung, don't worry, I'll link it down below. Make sure you subscribe to me going forward so you don't miss any of my content, but yeah, I saved like $450 on a brand new S21 Plus. One last thing, I did bump the camera a few times while recording this, so if you see your screen shaking a little bit, it's not you, it's me, it's my fault, and sorry about that. I bought both of these phones, but I'm only going to keep one. Drop a comment down below which one you think I'm going to keep, and let's go ahead and dive into the video. Alright, OnePlus on the left, Samsung on the right. Let's start with something you use multiple times every single day, the fingerprint scanner. Now these phones use different technologies for their fingerprint scanners. Samsung's is supposed to be more secure. I don't have a way to test that, and OnePlus's, in my experience, has been faster. OnePlus's, like I said, is a bit faster in my experience, but the screen does need to be illuminated to use it. I can't capture this on video, but if you're in a dark room, what you'll see is when you go to use the OnePlus fingerprint sensor, the screen underneath there just lights up. Not a good thing, not a bad thing, just something to be aware of. The only time I really notice that is if I have the eye comfort or blue light filter on, whatever you want to call it, because the screen lights up white, and then once you unlock the phone, then the phone starts to go back into that eye comfort, like yellow tinge phase. Again, not the end of the world, but something that is a little bit weird the first time you see it. You do get used to it over time, at least I did. Since the screen has to be on for that to work, as you can see, the ambient display or always on display is now turned off. If I turn the screen off, it's not going to work without me lighting the screen up. So just a little double tap, screen's lit up, and now bam, works right away. I don't use the always on display. We'll get to that more here in a little bit, but that's just something to keep in mind. If you don't use the always on display, you're gonna have to double tap the screen to wake it up, and then you can get into the phone. Now with Samsung's technology, one of the perks is it will work if the screen is off. As you can see, screen's completely black, no always on display. Put my finger about where the fingerprint sensor is, and boom, it opens up. I'll keep the screen lit up just so you guys can see where that fingerprint sensor is, but if I put my finger on it, it's not quite as fast as the OnePlus, but like I said, it is arguably more secure. Not having always on display on saves battery, so it's nice to have the Samsung just be able to put your finger somewhere on the screen and get the fingerprint sensor to work, phone unlocks, you know the deal. There are downsides to both. On OnePlus, since you have to have the screen light up, if you don't have ambient display or always on display going, you have to light the screen up to get the fingerprint sensor to work. But the downside on Samsung is it's much harder to get this to work with screen protectors on. I don't know if you can see, I've got a screen protector on. Tempered glass screen protectors are a pain in the butt to get the fingerprint sensor to work at all. The one I have on here now is not glass. It doesn't feel like glass, but it doesn't feel bad. It does work really well with that fingerprint sensor, as you guys can see here on camera. So I'll link them down below. They're pretty cheap. It's like $10 a 3-pack, but just something else to keep in mind if you love having a tempered glass. In that same vein, the pin works different on both phones. I type in the last number on OnePlus, bam, it opens. Type in the last number on Samsung. Similar to the Pixels, I have to hit OK before the screen unlocks. Just something else to keep in mind. So the home screens look pretty much the same, but I have this extra widget over here on the right side for Samsung that is not on the OnePlus. That's because on OnePlus, you can easily, make the phone be muted or on vibrate or full volume just by that switch there on the side. One thing of note, if you push the volume key on here, you see media output there at the top instead of the normal, silence, vibrate, sound on. To demonstrate what I'm talking about, this is a Pixel 4a 5G. I push the volume button there and you can see there at the top, volume's on, now it's on vibrate, now it's muted. So on OnePlus, you get the physical switch. On Samsung, you don't have those options. So if I push the volume key, you can see I've got the volume all the way down there, push the 3 dots. I can adjust them independently, but there's no quick, mute, vibrate, sound on, etc. So that's what this toggle does. If I pull my phone closer to the camera there at the top, you can see I've got the mute icon there at the top in the status bar. I push that widget, now volume's on, push it again, we're muted again. So there's another win for OnePlus there in my book. I found a workaround on Samsung, but I like the way that OnePlus implements it a lot better, especially if you're going into meetings now that offices and stuff like that are opening back up post-COVID, or you're on a video call, you don't want your phone popping off whenever you get a text message, you get the deal. Next up, notification shade, auto brightness, etc. Swiping down from the top here, you can see on OnePlus, we've got the brightness slider right there. If I want, I can tap this little auto brightness thing there on the right side. Turns the brightness on auto, turns it off, pretty standard. but I can reach it all there on the first pull down. On Samsung, nowhere to be found, so I have to swipe down once on OnePlus to access the brightness and the brightness slider. On Samsung, I have to slide down once, it's not there. Slide down again. Now I have access to the brightness, but if I want auto brightness, I have to push that little triangle there at the bottom. So 3 steps, 4-step process for what takes 1 step on the OnePlus. Not a huge deal maybe for you. I mean, down here in Florida, it's super sunny, so being able to turn the brightness all the way up or, have auto brightness on, I guess isn't that big of a deal. But it is something that I notice, something that I change all the time on the fly, so it's annoying that Samsung takes, 2 steps to adjust the brightness, a total of 4 steps to turn on auto brightness, where I get it all right there in 1 step on the OnePlus. Next up, system navigation, home screen, launchers, recent apps. I really didn't know what to call this one, but on OnePlus you can see there's no buttons there at the bottom. On Samsung we have them. On the OnePlus, this is the default launcher. Swipe up from the bottom, apps in alphabetical order, swipe to the right to get to your work profile, and then swipe up and hold from the bottom with gestures, you get your recent apps. I like there at the bottom we can see a preview of what app is coming up next. That's just kind of cool in my opinion. And then a nice little clear all button there at the bottom. On Samsung, I'm using a third-party launcher, swiping up from the bottom. We get everything in alphabetical order, swiping to the right for work apps, just how I like it. And then recent apps will give you like a nice little, recent app menu, frequent apps that you use there at the bottom with a little close all. So again, side by side, a little bit different from OnePlus. Samsung's trying to guess what I'm going to use here on the bottom, whereas OnePlus is showing me what app is coming up next. Another note there at the top, Samsung gives you the option for search, which I've never used, but some of you might. OnePlus does not. So I have gotten used to gestures. I do like them a lot on the OnePlus. I don't know if you caught it, I had them here on my Pixel 4a 5G, which one of these phones will replace. And I just turned the gestures on here on Samsung. So let me show you the issue that I keep running into. We'll fire up my web browser, go back home, and we'll see if I can capture it here on camera. But what happens to me is it seems like the home screen wants to redraw the launcher. So what I mean by that is, it just did it right there. I don't know if the camera caught it. You see that little flicker. It's like the home screen wants to just redraw what's already on there. App drawer, going back home, browser, going back home. Again, just trying to get this to fire and emulate it. But it's definitely bizarre. I've gone on some Samsung forums. I've seen the issue pop up. It just did it there again. And what it is, like I said, a redrawing. So you go home, but then the home goes, let me do it again. So you see a flicker. It might be hard to capture here on camera, but it's something that you will definitely notice using this in person. So the issue just has to do with Samsung and third-party launchers. If you're using Samsung's launcher with gestures, you don't get this issue at all. But like I said, I like having my apps there in alphabetical order, swiping to the right for work profile. It's Android. Third-party launcher should not be a big deal, but this issue's been present since the S10 at least. In the forums, like I mentioned, people know about it. Samsung knows about it because a lot of forum posts just redrew there again where I went home and then tried to access my recent apps. And I remember running into this on the S10 Plus like 2 years ago. So Samsung should know about this issue. I don't know if they're just indifferent about it. They just don't want to fix it because, screw you, it's a Samsung phone, use our launcher. Or what the case is there. But I really wanted to call it out. You might think the issue's minor, that's fine. But I've seen videos where people talk about the best launchers in, 2020 or 2021. And they're demoing it on a Samsung with gestures. It's like, guys, this is a terrible user experience. I tried Hyperion, Nova, the Poco launcher. I tried a couple other launchers. I tried, 6 or 7 launchers in total, and they all did this. And then I took to the forums, found out it's a known issue with Samsung. They just haven't done anything to fix it yet. So it's definitely annoying. Samsung needs to address it. That is inexcusable, especially for a phone that costs, $1,000, or on the, S21 Ultra, $1,500. So not letting Samsung off the hook, it is BS. It's something they need to address. It's also something you need to know about if you're thinking about buying this phone and you don't like the Samsung launcher. Next, this is kind of minor, but the backs of the phones, Samsung has this matte finish to it. I like the way that it feels a lot. The OnePlus is a very smooth, glossy finish. May or may not matter to you. They are both glass, so as they heat up, if you're playing a game or streaming video or something, your hands are going to sweat a little bit. It's going to be harder to hang on to the phone, so I threw on a case regardless, but just something I thought I'd call out here. The next difference, just briefly, these both have stereo speakers. Samsung does have Dolby Atmos, as you can see there with the toggle. OnePlus does not. Loudness-wise, quality-wise, they're about the same. On the OnePlus, though, this bottom speaker does a lot of the heavy lifting. It still does a lot of the heavy lifting on the Samsung, but it felt like, 60% on the Samsung was coming from the bottom, whereas 80% of the OnePlus was coming from the bottom. Like I said, both sounded good, just something else I thought I'd note. Next up, cell reception. To be clear, I did not have a problem with either phone, but you need to keep this in mind if you want to buy one of these. These were both purchased unlocked from Samsung.com and OnePlus.com respectively, but the OnePlus is only certified for T-Mobile 5G. It's not certified for AT&T or Verizon's ultra-wideband. The S21 Plus is. Now, depending on your area and carrier, that may or may not matter. Right now I'm on T-Mobile via Straight Talk, so for me, both of these work just fine, but I don't want to be locked into a specific carrier if I want to, go to Verizon or Straight Talk jacks their prices. You get the idea. So it's definitely something that is worth considering. All right, if you've been paying attention, the OnePlus is slaughtering the Samsung. I mean, it's not even close. The OnePlus has won in almost every single category. But you guys knew these last two were coming. It's battery and camera, and this is where the Samsung jumps out in front and makes a legit argument for me keeping this over the OnePlus. Camera-wise, the OnePlus has been decent, but I would still take my Pixel 4a 5G over the OnePlus camera, no joke. What's nice about it is the shutter speed is super quick, so if I fire this up right here, take a couple pictures, as you can see, it's snapping them right away. Shutter speed is nice and quick. I love that about this phone. But the picture quality just has not been there. So this is the only picture I have of these two phones side by side. It was out of my back window. There is a screen on that window, but on the OnePlus, it doesn't look bad. It looks relatively true to life. Look how much the Samsung pops though. What was true to real life is somewhere in between these two pictures. Neither one did a perfect job, but just look at this. Look at the bricks, look at the trees, look at the red. It just looks washed out and maroon here, where it's really more like this red. The trees look healthy on the Samsung. They look like they're dying, or it's winter or something on the OnePlus. It's just no contest. The OnePlus camera's a step up, but this smokes it. And if you're like me and you watch camera comparisons, people are like, oh, it's, the OnePlus does good, it's okay, it does, well enough against the Samsung. No. Not close. The Samsung trumps it in every single situation, and it's not a contest. So the OnePlus does fine. If you don't take a lot of pictures or don't care, this will do you just fine. But if you want your camera to be good, flagship level-ish, this isn't an S21 Ultra, just the Plus. This is just, it's great. It's a phenomenal camera. Finally, the battery, and we'll touch on charging speed too. Any comparison that I've seen personally between the OnePlus 9 or Pro and the Samsung S21 Normal Plus Ultra only talks about charging speed. And for that, yeah, the OnePlus smokes the Samsung. I mean, just look at the difference in the charging brick. Samsung on the right, OnePlus on the left. 25 watts, which I bought on Amazon, versus 65 on the OnePlus. It's no contest. But day-to-day battery life usage, the OnePlus is terrible. And I apologize, I don't have pictures to show you guys of the battery life that I was getting. I was struggling to hit 6 hours of screen on time, which if you watch my previous videos, that's my benchmark for I can make it through a day with this phone. Now, I know what you might be thinking, you're working from home, does battery life really matter that much when you can charge the phone that quickly? And it depends on the person, which is why I'm even mentioning this. For me, it does. I love checking out new breweries. There's a ton of them here in Florida. If I need to use my maps and get on the highway, go an hour and a half to a new venue. And then I'm using my phone while I'm there, checking in beers and using my GPS to get back. Yeah, I don't know if the OnePlus could take me there. I don't trust it to make it through the day. So what I did on the OnePlus, I went from 5.5, 6 hour screen on time to turning the screen from 120 Hertz down to 60, and I could get closer to 7.5 hour screen on time. Now, most days, that gets me through the day, but then I'm cutting out one of the OnePlus's selling features, right? The 120 Hertz screen on the phone. And there's really no excuse for that. Why advertise something that's going to kill the battery life on the phone? Why do I have to turn off one of your selling points to get the phone to last me a full day? That's ridiculous. Something to note here, I'm recording this in April. I bought this phone at launch, I pre-ordered it, and I've already got 2 major software updates that are supposed to address the camera and the battery. So it sounds like OnePlus knows this is an issue, but they shouldn't launch the phone like this. That's unacceptable. I'm not giving them a pass just because they're trying to fix the issue after the fact. I spent $750 on this phone. Why the hell do I have to wait to get a software update to make my phone usable throughout a full day? The Samsung, on the other hand, has 25-watt charging. It charges 0 to 100 in an hour and a half or so. It's not slow. It's just not as quick as the OnePlus, but the battery is so much better. And so you can see what the settings look like. OnePlus gives you 60 or 120, period. Samsung gives you 60 or adaptive, which will drop it down, I believe, as low as 1 Hertz refresh rate all the way up to 120. And I haven't needed to turn the Samsung over to standard. I'm getting about 7.5 hour screen on time on the Samsung using the default adaptive screen settings. While on the OnePlus, I have to turn it down to 60 Hertz to hit that. It's one of those things really, you might not care about that. And that's fine if you don't care. If you turn your screen down to 60 Hertz to get a good refresh rate, you're like, you know what, the OnePlus, I don't take a lot of pictures, this is the phone for me. That's fine. I just want to make sure that you know before spending this much money on a phone. And again, if you've watched my channel before, you know how much I hate Samsung software. You know how much I've ripped on them in the past. I will never get a free device from Samsung, ever. And I know that, and that's okay, because I'm really tough on them because I know they can do better. And OnePlus, it's weird because the roles have kind of switched. The OnePlus I was so excited to get And I was so disappointed using it. You know, it's like, I knew the camera probably wouldn't be as good as Samsung's, but the battery life too, like, man, I can't make it through a full day. That's just, come on, guys. So in summary, side by side, OnePlus wins out on software. If you've watched the channel before, OnePlus and Xiaomi make my two favorite skins for Android. Samsung makes one of my least favorite skins for Android. But taking these two phones at a similar price as a whole, Samsung wins, and it's really not a hesitation for me at this point. If I'm missing something, let me know down below. One more thing I forgot to mention, call quality. Samsung just wins out, both on my end and on the person that I was speaking to. I did a lot of blind tests with Carrington to try to figure out which one he thought sounded better, and it was always the Samsung. I don't know if that's just because the Samsung has more radios, or better radios, or is better tuned, like I mentioned with the 5G stuff versus the OnePlus, or the specific hardware or what, but the Samsung does sound better on your end when you're getting called and on the end of the person that you are calling. Wrapping this one up, like I said, I'm only keeping one of these phones, and the phone that I'm keeping is the S21 Plus. I really wanted to keep the OnePlus 9. I wanted that to be the phone that I kept, even though it was $200 more expensive and didn't have some of the features the Samsung has. But the biggest killer for me was the battery. Yeah, the camera's not as good. Any comparison that you watch between the S21 series and the OnePlus 9 series will say the Samsung's camera is better. But I don't know if they capture how much better the Samsung camera is. It's just a point and shoot, take a picture to post to Instagram or send to your friends or whatever. It really is night and day. The OnePlus's camera is the best that OnePlus has ever had, but it's still not, flagship level. And the 65-watt charging was awesome, it just could not make up for those battery woes. I do travel a lot to different breweries and volleyball tournaments and things like that where I really need to rely on my phone to get me through the day when it's being pounded by, maps or navigation or pictures or checking beers in or whatever the case may be. And the OnePlus, I just can't rely on to get me through a day. And I know there are car chargers and things like that, but that just seems like an unnecessary compromise where the phone is not, that much better at the things that I like than the Samsung for me to justify it. And the reason I'm reiterating this point is because maybe you don't care about that. Maybe the battery's fine for you. You have a car charger. You'll keep a car charger with you. You'll keep an extra warp charger with you for work, whatever the case may be. I just want to make sure that the battery issues are apparent because I haven't seen anybody mention this. They'll do like a generic battery test. It's like, oh, it's not that bad. It's a half an hour behind on some random use case that nobody is ever going to fit into. So if you're fine with your screen just being 60 Hz on the OnePlus, then great, go for it. But on Samsung, I haven't had to turn that screen refresh down to 60 Hz. I can leave it at their adaptive, which will go all the way up to 120. And OnePlus has put out phones with half-assed software before, so maybe this issue is resolved 2 months from now. I have no idea or no way of knowing. Just it's something that's happened with them before. That wraps this one up though. Drop a comment and tell me which phone you would pick if you had to choose between one of these two devices. And if you want a new Samsung phone, make sure you click the link in the description on how to save $300 or more on a brand new S21. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.